Good morning. This is Valerie Leonard from the nonprofit Utopia. I wanted to say thank you so much for joining us and welcome you to today's live stream. For those of you who have been following us, you know that we are focusing this month on social enterprise. And we know that by nature, by definition, nonprofits are social enterprises because they have a social mission. But for our purposes this month, we're focusing on a social enterprise as it relates to those companies or those organizations that are focusing on revenue generation. And when I say revenue generation, that's money generated from a product or a service as opposed to a government contract or a grant. All right. So without further ado, I am going to share my screen and then, give you a recap of what we've been doing and then take you forward. All right, so today we're going to talk about how to start a social enterprise. And while you're there, if you could post your name, where you're from, if you have any experience with the social enterprise, please share your experience. And if you have any questions or comments, please share those as we go along. And then afterwards, I will answer any questions or respond to any comments. All right. So, just to give you a recap of the last 5 days, we started off by sharing with you strategies to assess whether or not your organization is ready to actually start a social enterprise. And again, this is a separate entity in addition to your nonprofit, or if your nonprofit wants to launch a product or a service that they're going to actually charge fees for. All right. We also showed you how to research your idea and some of the resources that you can use in order to, kind of get a feel for whether or not people could be interested in what you're doing. And then after that, we talked about how you can identify your product's unique value proposition. All right. And we found out that there's more to a unique value proposition than meets the eye. And we'll retouch recap on that again later on. And then yesterday we showed you how to test your business model before you actually go to market. And a business model is not to be confused with a business plan. And we'll go over that again some more. So today we're going to build upon those lessons learned and then show you how to go forward in the event that you found that it does make sense to go ahead. And we're also going to show you how to avoid some of the pitfalls that people commonly fall into. So we're going to talk about how to start a social enterprise. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions, make comments. Our members will get a checklist of what they need in order to start a social enterprise, and then they'll have other resources that they can download in the nonprofit Utopia community. And everyone will have access to this recording, and it's going to be stored on our YouTube page. All right. And again, this presentation is based on information that we got from Strategizer. In addition to the sources you see here, we have also gone to the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunities website, as well as the SBA, Small Business Administration's website. All right, so again, just to make sure we're all on the same page with our definition of unique value proposition is not just what makes you different, but it's an informed way to determine, how you're different and also communicate how you're different in the environment, right? So it's a bundle of products, services, and programs that create value for a customer segment. And that comes from Osterwalder, Pinure, Bernarder, and Smith. And then basically, more simply, is the set of benefits that you put together to attract customers. And then we share with you how to actually determine your value proposition. And that, the tool that we showed you how to use was the value proposition canvas, where you look at what's going on with your ideal customer, understand, you know, what he does on a day-to-day basis or what she does on a day-to-day basis. If it's a consumer product, then you want to really understand the lifestyle. If it's a product where you're providing a service to a business, then you understand what they go through on a day-to-day basis on their job and help them make their jobs easier. So you're looking at what they choose to aspire to. You're also looking at what problems they may have reaching their goals. And your job is to create products and services that have features that will help them achieve their goals and also relieve some of the pain. So the real value comes together when you understand, what's going on with your client and you're able to create products and services that meet those needs as they relate to making their lives easier, helping them achieve their goals, and helping to minimize some of that pain. And also remember, no value is created unless money changes hand. If you're producing a product or a service that's useful but people won't pay for, then you really have not created value. All right, so you want to take that value proposition, and you really could have more than one value proposition. Ideally, you're going to do a value proposition canvas for every customer segment. So you're going to start off with your value propositions, and you're going to list those, right? And then you're going to look at, how you deliver that value proposition. The value proposition canvas is all about the what the value is, and then the business model canvas is all about how you're going to deliver those value propositions. So you're going to look at the partners that you need. You want to look at the key activities in which you're going to engage on a day-to-day basis in order to produce that value proposition. You're going to look at the resources that you need. You're going to look at the customer relationships and how you relate to those customers. You're going to look at the distribution channels, the communications channels, the sales channels. You're going to look at your customer segments, and then you're going to look at how much it costs to actually deliver that value proposition. And that takes into account how much it costs for you to engage and retain your partners, engage in your day-to-day activities, the resources, how much it's going to cost to acquire customers and maintain relationships, and the cost for communicating and selling through certain channels, and actually, other costs of doing business. So you want to list those costs and know exactly how much you think it's going to cost. There's always a projection, right? And then you'll look at what expected revenues you're going to get and the ways you're going to generate those revenues. And you can uh, get more detail on the value proposition as well as how to, determine whether or not this is right for you. And all of the other videos, those are stored on YouTube where we can go into further detail. All right. And we also talked to you yesterday about how you can validate your business model and determine whether or not you should proceed, right? So the first thing you do is fill out a test card where you kind of determine what your hypothesis is going to be, what you think is going to happen in the market once you introduce your test. And then you'll indicate how you're going to verify it. You'll indicate how you're going to measure it. And then you'll indicate too something to the effect that if if you're right, then X, Y, or Z should happen. Right. And then once you uh, do that test card, you actually go out into the marketplace and conduct some tests. And after you get the data back, you fill out your learning card. You indicate that, from the start, you believe that X. So you'll start off with your original hypothesis, but then you'll indicate what you actually observed or actually experienced. And then you'll indicate what you've learned. And as a result of this learning, you're going to do X, Y, Z. All right. Classic scientific experiment. And then we talked about the progress card where you can indicate all of your hypotheses and the way you tested and what you learned all on one page. You can indicate what your progress has been, and then you can score whether or not your hypothesis was validated, if you still need more information and your results are unclear, or if they are invalidated. So it's kind of like a scorecard, so to speak. So after you test your model, you're probably wondering, what next? You're still not necessarily in a place where you want to launch, but you still are in a much, much better position than you were when you started. So now we're going to talk about what those next steps are. And the first thing you want to do is choose your business name. And that business name should be a name that supports the activities, goods, and services that you're going to do. And in an ideal sense, you want to be able to communicate something about what it is that you do to someone so they know what it is you do without even going to your website, right? And after that, after you select a name, you want to make sure that it's not being used in your state. So you want to conduct a name search, and you can go to Illinois State, Illinois SOS, so that's Secretary of State.gov, and you can see that they have rebranded Cyber Drive Illinois has all been wrapped up into Illinois State of Secretary.gov. All right, so you can actually do an online search. You type in the name that you think you want to use and hope and pray that it doesn't come up. If it comes up, then you know you need to use another name. They're not going to allow you to register in an organization or a business with someone, with the name that somebody else is using. All right. And then after that, you want to decide what your legal structure is going to be. So your legal structure is not the same as your organization structure. Your legal structure is whether or not you're going to be sole proprietor, a C Corp, LLC, a L3C, which is, it's a corporation, but its sole mission is not to make money. It also has a social mission. All right, so it's low profitability liability corporation. All right, you've got the partnership, you've got the LLP, which is a limited liability partnership, and it protects the partner's liability. And then you've got the joint venture. So you want to, again, decide what your structure is going to be as to how you're going to approach the market, and then you're going to file your organizing documents. And the most common that you might encounter, if you're an organization, would be the corporation, the LLC, the LLP, or the DBA. DBA is doing business as. So you can file your organizing documents, and then you want to open a bank account. All right. So, and this bank account should be separate from the organization's bank account. And it, obviously will be authorized by the president, and you have signatories who might also include the secretary and the treasurer. Okay. So the next step is to have an EIN. In fact, you should have this employer identification number on hand before you even go to the bank, right? Because they're not going to open the account without it. They need a way to track who you are, for tax purposes. Not that they're charging taxes, but they want to make sure that they're collecting information. So in the need that the IRS needs to track information down, they'll have it through the bank. All right, so this is the page, this is irs.gov, and you can actually go online and complete the application for your EIN. You can get it relatively quickly, almost immediately, if you go online. And make sure that the website that you're on is for the IRS. There are a number of businesses that are springing up that are doing similar things. They're serving as the middle person between you and the government, and they're charging a fee. So make sure you're on the government website. You also want to get a DUNS number. So you have a history, a track record, as far as your credit is concerned as a new entity. And the DUNS number will also put you in a position to bid for government contracts on the state, county, and federal level. You want to determine your governance structure. And when we talk about the governance structure, we're basically talking about, you know, the structure for, say, your board. You might have a set of advisors, etc. And, that's going to be driven by the type of structure that you have legally, right? So if you have a corporation, some sort of corporation, it will have board members, right? And it'll be governed by bylaws. If you have some sort of partnership, including an LLP, it'll be governed by partnership agreements, right? And then if you have an LLC, it'll be governed by an operating agreement. All right, and after that, you want to design your organization structure. And basically, what the organization structure does is structure the work and the functions of the organization itself. All right, so ideally, regardless of how many employees you have, you want to be able to map out, the who's in charge in terms of, the governance of this organization. You want to be able to map who the chief um, operating officer is, or who the chief executive operating officer is, department heads, or even departments. It all depends on how complex this organization, but you want to have mapped the different functions. So you want to map the administrative functions, the financial functions, the marketing functions, the human resource functions, functions as it relates to delivering your programs, services, as well as your products. And then you want to establish who those key managers and employees are. And you really should be very, very careful in your hiring. You want to make sure that the people that you're hiring have experience in the job that you need them to do, so that your venture is a high performing venture. At the end of the day, when you seek funding from your banks, from your investors, the first thing they're going to look at is, the capability of the people that work for this new entity, to see if they're capable of doing what it is that you say that you want to do. All right, so after that, you want to actually write the business plan. So again, this is different from the business model. It's the plan itself. This is much more detailed, and it sets you up to begin to take the next step of determining, what the day-to-day operations are going to look like. So you have your executive summary, and as you've heard before, the executive summary is actually written last. It's a summary, 1 or 2 pages of everything else in the plan. And basically, you want to think about it like this. You want to include a little bit about the what, the who, the how much money you're looking for, and why you're writing the plan in the first place. Some people do business plans not necessarily because they want to go and get financing. They just really want to be clear on what it is they're trying to achieve. And then they want to begin to set some metrics in place so that they can actually measure their progress. But most people, when they do a business plan, they're actually writing so they can either get a bank loan or that they can get financing from investors. So you're going to include a company description, talk about what the company does, and you want to talk about your market analysis. Make sure you communicate how you know that there's an opportunity, how you are going to approach the market, understand the pricing, where you're going to actually sell, right? How you're going to sell, how you're going to promote your product in the market. Then you want to also describe your organization structure. That's the legal structure as well as, the organization chart, so to speak, how the work is going to be structured and under what people, and that'll help people to understand, the relationships between the various functions and how it all comes together so you can produce your products and services. And then you will talk about your management too. So not only are you looking at the structure, but you're looking at the management. You want to talk about their capabilities in terms of the skills that they have, as well as the experience that they have to give us, the reader, or us, the investors, us, the banker, and a really good comfort level in knowing that the people who are minding the store, so to speak, can actually get done what they say they want to get done. All right. And then after that, you'll talk about your products and services, and you want to also talk about the marketing and sales strategies, right? In these two sections, you want to really be able to refer to that research that you've been doing, those tests you've been doing. You also want to give comfort that there is real potential for this market. All right. And then after that, you're going to do the funding request, which is asking how much money and and giving a justification as to how you're going to use the money, and most importantly, how you're going to pay folks back. And then you're going to share financial projections, and those financial projections need to be very, very closely aligned with your marketing projections, and you have to have really sound rationale as to the choices you're making and the reason that you believe that you can make XY dollars. Believe you me, your investors are going to grill you on that. All right. And then after that, you have an appendix that will give people more detail into, some of your plans. All right. And after that, you really, really want to determine whether or not your business is feasible. And really going through that business planning process will help you understand whether or not your business is feasible. So if it's feasible from a marketing perspective, if it's feasible from an operating perspective, if it's feasible from a financial perspective, then you have cause to proceed, right? But then you also want to look at your break-even amount. Look at what it's going to take for you to recoup your initial investment, and then after that, you want to see, what your required return is going to be. How, what percentage return on your money do you want to see, or what percent return do the investors want to see? And if it meets all of your criteria for going forward, then you decide go or no go. All right. And then you should also be aware that there are a number of filings that you're going to need to complete, beyond your articles of incorporation or whatever organizing document you need. You need to be aware that you have to register with the state of Illinois. And again, that is done primarily through your articles of incorporation. And then there's also a Reg 1 form where you have to let the state of Illinois know that you're in business, right? Then you've got a form for unemployment insurance, right? To put the government on notice that you are a new organization and that they should start to assess fees for unemployment insurance so you can become part of that pool. And that's mandatory. You don't have an option. You also need to complete state and federal income tax, and state and federal unemployment insurance reports, and then your annual reports with the state. And this is for the state of Illinois. Other states have similar requirements. So if you're not in the state of Illinois, I suggest that you go to whatever state department that regulates corporations and nonprofits and see what is required. All right, so after you have decided that your venture is feasible and it's necessary to get funds beyond your organizational reserves, then you will get financing either through a bank or through investors. And that equity can be through a traditional equity investor, or it could be through a foundation which will invest through their impact investing fund, right? And then you also want to be mindful to protect your good name, not only through providing good customer services and quality products, but you also want to consider getting a trademark for that name, right? It really should be enough to have your name registered, but you might want to take the extra step of getting the name trademark. If you consider doing a DBA, then you'll have to register that name. When you get your websites, you should register a domain name that's the same name as your business. Ideally, if that's not possible, you want to get something that's very close to it. And then, each just know that each one of those registrations serves a different purpose. They're all legal, and you should ideally, again, have the same name in all of those spaces. But if they're not available, then you want to have names that are close enough to your business name that people will recognize it, right? The next thing you want to do beyond putting a trademark to your name, and you don't really have to, but again, some people have such a unique name that they feel a desire to do a trademark on their business name as well. You also need a trademark if there's some intellectual property that you want to protect. So there might be copyrights for, different publications and photographs that you have, trademarks to um, to protect certain logos that you might have, or service marks, right? A patent for an invention that you might have. All of those things protect your intellectual property. They increase value for the business, and they also could give you a competitive advantage in the marketplace. And here's contact information for some places that you can go to find out more about protecting your intellectual property. We've got the Harold Washington Library Center. So that's Chicago's main branch library. There are librarians on hand who can help guide you through the process of finding resources to protect your intellectual property. You've got the Secretary of State in the event that you want to do a state level trademark. And if you want to do a national level trademark, you can go to the Copyright Office of the Library of Congress. All right. So you also want to consider registering with SAM.gov. And SAM.gov allows you to do business with um, the state and federal and county government. It started off originally as a place for people to register who wanted to do business with the federal government. But as state and county governments and city governments align themselves more closely with the federal government in terms of their processes for procurement, it's become increasingly necessary to register with SAM.gov. And I would suggest too, even if you're not yet doing business with the state, federal, or city government, that you register with SAM.gov anyway. You never know when an opportunity is going to come up, and you have to have this registration in place. All right, so you should do that as soon as possible. And then the same advice for people who want to get state contracts. You need to register with GATA. This is for nonprofits as well as for profits. Create an account and then go through the process of being pre-qualified. So when opportunities come up, you can actually respond and not be held up with the paperwork or even denied because you haven't gone through the process. You also want to sign up to be notified of procurement opportunities at the city, state, county, and federal levels. And you also want to make sure you get licenses. Now, licenses are not required for every business, but those businesses that do require licenses, like, for example, childcare, you want to make sure that you get the license for. All right. So those will be licenses at the state level as well as the city level. And you should also, go and talk to, folks at the city, county, and state level that are dealing with procurement as well as licensing to make sure that you understand what the requirements are for licensing and permitting for your particular business. All right. You should also think about, what your facility should be. You're going to select the facility. If your business is something where it's not necessary to have high visibility, you might not be as concerned about being on the main strip as you would in retail, right? So you want to look at what your needs are in terms of operations, as well as what your needs are in terms of being able to interface with your suppliers, interface with your customers, right? So on both ends, right? So know what your operations are, what activities in which you're engaging for production as well as sales, how many employees you're going to have, what the various functions of the departments, or even just, if you're not large enough to have departments, what are the business functions, and making sure that you have a space that can accommodate all of those things. If you're going into new construction, you have to understand, what the process is for um, construction, understanding how to get the financial and market feasibility of that space and getting a return on investment and all of that stuff, right? Knowing what zoning is necessary, what permits are necessary, and knowing whether or not this is a business that will be received by the public. There's some businesses that are considered dirty businesses, and people don't want those businesses in their neighborhoods because of environmental concerns. There may be other businesses that, for whatever reason, people don't want. Or in some cases, if your design seems like it's going to be too bulky and really impair parking and all that stuff, you need to be able to take into account what concerns are from the community and make sure that not only does your new construction suit your business needs, but make sure that it's not going to be perceived as some nuisance to the community. And renovation, again, you still have to do your due diligence in terms of renovation, understanding what the risks and costs are for renovation. All right. Next, you want to be concerned with putting the meat on the bones. This is really building the infrastructure of your organization. So things like staffing, mapping out your day-to-day operations, developing policies and procedures, making sure that you have strong financial controls and all of that stuff. You need to take that into account. And for those of you who don't necessarily want to go the L3C route, which is an actual legal structure, if you don't want to do that legal structure, you can still go into social enterprise with the regular C Corp. But if you want to be designated, as a social enterprise, you might consider one way of being a certified green business. There's another way is through the B Corp. But if you're going to go through the certification as a green business, you have to demonstrate that you are a platform. You're using your business as a platform for social change. You have to demonstrate that you have a value-based social enterprise. And they have a whole set of criteria and standards that they're going to judge you by, so to speak, when you do your application, and you have to make sure that you incorporate those standards into your business. The Green Business certification indicates that you're not only socially responsible, but you're environmentally responsible in the way you conduct your business, either through providing a service or a product or through your manufacturing. And then you want to be sure that you are, again, meeting or exceeding those standards. So if you want more information, you can go to Green America, and so that's greenamerica.org, and understand what that certification is all about. All right. And what I love about them is the fact that they're not just committed to green, but to social justice and equity. The more commonly used certification is the certified B Corp. And again, that's a designation for corporations. Again, they don't necessarily have a legal structure that indicates that they're a social enterprise, but they go through a certification process. So you will have had to demonstrate a high social and environmental performance. And so there's an assessment that you have to go through, and you get a rating, and you need to have a score of 80 or above. And then you have to make a legal commitment by changing your corporate governance structure so that it's accountable to all stakeholders and not just shareholders. So this will also go a long way toward meeting, your core value of diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? So again, you'll be uh, designated as a B Corp or benefit corporation. And then you're also transparent in your operations. And transparency indicates not only what you do, but how you do it so people really can understand your business. And then you're going to measure your performance in transparency against other benchmarks set by um, other B Corps. And you can find out more information by Googling uh, I believe it's the B Labs, but just Google certified B Corp and make sure that you go uh, to the original source. And when you see this logo, you will know that you're at the website where you can get information on how you go through the process of being certified. You're going to have to pay a fee based on the number, based on your revenues, and you'll also have to, pay that fee annually. All right, so if there are any questions or comments, please feel free to post. I am going to check right now to see what we have. All right, so there are no comments. I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in, and you will be able to get this video on YouTube. So thanks a lot for tuning in. Take care. Oh, and before I forget, we are going to have tomorrow, we're going to have Shelby Parchman on. Shelby Parchman is an investor. He is a pitch coach. He's also a business coach, helping people to get their products placed in stores, particularly in the food industry. So we're going to hear from him tomorrow. And if we can get someone to actually submit a pitch, he's going to be willing to review that pitch tomorrow live. Okay? Talk to you later. Take care. Bye bye.